Okay, so hey there guys. So today's video is going to be a super exciting one. Today's video I'm going to be ranking all of my eyeshadow palettes that I had added to my collection in 2019. I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best. I just wanted to say before I start ranking all the palettes that I got in 2019, one disclaimer. Remember at the beginning of the year when I said I wasn't going to add too many purchases to my collection? I was going to be on a light no buy. I pretty much only stuck with that the first like 3 months of the year. Oh my god, I forgot an eyeshadow palette. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. 1 second. If I forgot this eyeshadow palette, I would have been so upset with myself. Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna put this right here. Wow, that would have been terrible. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, and I ended up purchasing like 13 eyeshadow palettes this year. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. But I did declutter 14 eyeshadow palettes. So I basically replaced all the eyeshadow palettes that I decluttered. So I basically started with, I have the same number of eyeshadow palettes that I started with because I added the same amount of eyeshadow palettes to my collection. So anyway, sorry, I'm just looking at my phone. Let's jump into it. And I also wanted to say, I feel that I added pretty much my favorite palettes ever in my collection. I feel like the palettes that I did add are kind of like some of my favorite palettes I've ever gotten. I feel like this year was kind of the year of the eyeshadow palette. I feel like brands just kind of just sucked you in and made you think that you needed all of these palettes in your collection. So let's start with the bottom. And we're going to start ranking the eyeshadow palette. So let's jump into it. I'm super excited to get into this video. So you guys know that the one brand that I purchased the most eyeshadow palettes from this year was ColourPop. I think ColourPop knows how to suck the consumer in and make you think that you need every single palette that they release. I was really trying to not get sucked in and not buy so many eyeshadow palettes, but I did not jump on the 9 palette bandwagon until like May this year, and I did decide to try 2 9-pan palettes from ColourPop. And honestly, I really was not impressed with the formula as much in the 9-pan palettes as I am in ColourPop's 12-pan palettes or anything bigger than 12 pans. I think that the formula in those palettes are much better. Also, I wanted to say before I start ranking the eyeshadow palettes that I don't regret buying any of these eyeshadow palettes, but I kind of wish that I skipped over these 2 palettes that I'm going to be ranking in the bottom. But at the same time, they were a fun addition to my collection. They were colors that I didn't really have in any other eyeshadow palettes. So let's start out with this guy. So the first one and the lowest ranked palette in my collection, but I really ranked the ones that I ranked the lowest. I'm only ranking the lowest because of the formula. I'm not ranking them lowest because I regret buying them or it was just a stupid buy. I just wish I would have waited to get the Frozen 2 eyeshadow palettes from ColourPop rather than just getting these right away, like early in the year. So let's start out with this one. So the one that's on the bottom, my number 13 pick would be the ColourPop Honey Pressed Powder Palette. Now, I love the packaging. I love the actual shades in this palette. I love everything about this palette, to be honest. Like I said, it's not like I dislike this palette. I almost dropped it. So these are the colors that come in this palette, and honestly, I don't have a problem with the color scheme, anything like that. I really do love the colors in this palette. I love the formula of the shimmer shades in this palette. They're typical standard run-of-the-mill shimmer shades from ColourPop that I really do love. But the thing about this palette is that I'm not too crazy about the mattes in here. I do like most of the mattes, but what kind of killed it for me for this palette was this shade right here. And I know I feel like I shouldn't be ranking it so low just because of one shade, but when you really do expect ColourPop to have a solid formula every time they come out with an eyeshadow palette, I just expected more from this. I feel like this color just doesn't really give you that definition or desired definition that you want on your outer corners. And I feel like every time I used this palette, I would only really reach for Stinger and Sweet Spot. They were all really good colors. I feel like this one was a little bit dry as well, but I just feel like the mattes overall in the 9-pan palettes from ColourPop are a little bit drier than the bigger palettes. So that would be the only reason why I'm ranking this palette at the bottom. It was a really, really, really fun palette to use during the summertime. I really got into using yellow eyeshadow in the summertime, and it was like the perfect summer palette. That's why I was really intrigued on getting this. And these shimmer shades are absolutely stunning. I love Dandy and Sunburst. They're just so beautiful. So those are the two shades. I'm not really going to be swatching all that much in this video because we'll be sitting here forever swatching, but I just wanted to show you guys how pretty those are. It is a good palette if you want to add, I'm sorry, my nose is running, I don't know why. If you want to add color to your collection, these are great palettes to add, but for me, this one just fell a little bit short, but I still really liked and enjoyed using it. So that is the bottom palette that I'm ranking. And then the next one I would have to say ranking on the bottom again would be, but I do like the formula more in this one than I do the Aha Honey palette, would be the ColourPop Main Squeeze palette. And this one is also a 9-pan palette. I do actually really do enjoy this palette. I think this is a really nice palette. But again, over the other palettes that I am ranking in this video, it just fell short of being like in my top 5. So I'm ranking the Main Squeeze palette at number 12. So this is what the palette looks like. And again, the colors in here are beautiful. I just find the only reason why I'm ranking, again, these palettes a little bit lower than the other palettes that I'm going to be ranking is that the mattes in here are a little bit dry and hard to work with. I find that the darker shades like Seed Money and Red Bottoms are a much drier formula. These ones are okay, but I feel like overall most of the mattes in this palette are very dry and they're a little bit harder to blend. I mean, you can still get a really beautiful look out of this palette. It is a really beautiful palette, and it was such a fun palette to use for the summertime. And it was a really fun palette to use for 4th of July, and again, it comes with a really beautiful mirror, and I loved the watermelon theme. I was just so obsessed with getting this palette because I just thought it was so adorable because of the watermelon theme. I was like, I don't have a watermelon palette, I need this. But at the same time, I really mostly got this palette because of the matte red and this beautiful shimmery red in this palette. But again, when I swatch these, they are very drying. I can feel how dry they are. It's not like they're not pigmented, and it's not like they don't swatch pretty or anything, but as you can see, they are pretty dry. And I did swatch the shimmer shade, and it just swatched very dry, as you can see that. So that would be the only reason why I would rank this palette lower as well. I'm just not too crazy about the run-of-the-mill 9-pan palettes from ColourPop. I much prefer their 12-pan palettes over these ones. So I kind of regret trying these, to be honest. I know a lot of people love these, but after these two, I don't think I'm going to get any more 9-pan eyeshadow palettes from ColourPop, with the exception of the Frozen 2 palettes that I got. But that was just because they were Disney palettes, and usually their Disney collabs are really, really solid. So again, these were both really fun additions to my summer looks, and I really enjoyed using them, and I'm definitely going to use this palette every single July 4th. This is my July 4th palette, and this I'm probably going to use every single August because I feel like they're just really beautiful summer palettes, but the formula just fell a little bit short for me, so that's why they're on the bottom. Okay, then the next palette, which is number 11, I believe. Yes, okay. So number 11 is actually the most recent palette that I added to my collection, and I'm talking about the House Laboratories, the Fame Glam Room #1 eyeshadow palette from Lady Gaga's makeup line. I almost said Lady Gag. Not Lady Gag, Lady Gag. So, first off, I do love the packaging. I just think it's so cool looking. And it's not like I'm actually ranking this palette lower because of the formula. I actually think the formula is really good. And I know I was saying that I was ranking these eyeshadow palettes because mostly I was ranking them because of the eyeshadow formulas. But I do like this eyeshadow formula. But I just don't think that this palette is anything like revolutionary. I don't think that this palette is essential to your collection unless you're, again, if you're a makeup collector and you're a makeup lover and you're a Lady Gaga lover, I would definitely recommend this palette. But I was just expecting a little bit more from her brand. But it's not like this palette is bad. I do think that I'm going to get a lot of use out of this palette. I have been using it a ton since I got it, and you're going to get a really beautiful look every time you do use this palette. I just don't think it's anything like revolutionary. The formula is really good. The shimmer shades are great in here. It's not like you're going to get a bad look when you use it. The mattes blend actually really smoothly. And I actually prefer these mattes over the ColourPop mattes that I was talking about. But as far as, like, you know, neutral palettes go, it's not going to be like my everyday palette that I reach for all the time over the other palettes that I'm going to be talking about. Again, the formula is great, but I just feel like I have other palettes in my collection that I like more than this one. But I do think that this was a good starter palette for her brand. She did say when she came out with it that she wanted to create an ease of use for the user to use her palette. So, and I do think that she nailed that. But as far as a makeup collector goes, I feel like you can get these kind of shades out of any other palette in your collection, even though I don't really have these shades in other palettes, so I feel like it was a good addition for me. But I was just expecting more of a wow factor. But these mattes are super, super, super buttery, and they do blend beautifully. So the formula is really good, actually. And I actually think that these mattes are some of the smoothest mattes that I've used in an eyeshadow palette this year. And the frosty shades, like this frosty shimmer shade and this brown one, I really have been loving as well. They're both just really, really nice shimmer shades. So the formula, again, is really, really good, and that's those two shades right there. So I'm not knocking the formula. I just think that she could have, you know, I just felt like with her brand, it was going to be more like avant-garde. But I understand that this is the first palette that they're coming out with, and I did think it was interesting enough. And I do think a lot of people are going to be interested in this palette. But with Gaga, you really do expect it to be like extravagant and very fashion forward. And I just feel like that's what her brand is lacking right now. Like, I just expected more from her. But it is a really good palette. But I just expected this to be like someone's first palette. Like, with Gaga, you just expect it to be like larger than life. And I just feel like Fenty's brand, Rihanna's brand, is kind of like they understand where they should take their makeup line, even though I haven't tried any Fenty Beauty eyeshadow palettes because I haven't been interested in any of them. I pretty much have gotten sucked into trying every other product from her brand because she's been releasing things like more gradually. I just feel like with Gaga, she kind of missed her mark for the first release, that like I feel like she already didn't really pull in the consumer, especially doing the whole like thing with Amazon and everything, but that's besides the point. So yeah, that's why it's number 11 on my list. Okay, now let's get into number 10. So number 10 is going to be the Disney Frozen 2 ColourPop Pressed Powder Palette, and this is the Elsa palette. Now, I do love this palette. It's not like I don't like it. I do actually really like it a lot more than I expected it, and then I expected to like it. First off, the packaging on these, I'm not trying to be biased, but the packaging on this and the Anna palette is my all-time favorite ColourPop packaging they have ever done for any palette. I love this cardboard packaging for these palettes. I love that they did cardboard packaging for the 9-pan palettes. I feel like that's why I like these palettes more. I don't know. But I did use this quite a bit when I first got it. I just ranked this one lower than the Anna palette because I just feel I'm not going to be reaching for this on a daily basis because I feel like the colors just weren't cohesive enough for me. I did end up really loving the formula. I do feel like that this palette is going to be a palette that I use a lot in the winter time, but it's just not, there's not enough staple colors in here for me to use it as like a neutral palette for everyday use. Like for a look like this is a look that I wear 99% of the time, 3 days a week at least. So I just feel like for that reason, I ranked it lower. But the formula of this palette is beautiful. I loved using it for the movie. I did quite a few looks for it on my channel, and I did really love the formula. But I just feel like they should have added like maybe like some other colors in this palette. But at the same time, like, it's supposed to be a little bit unusual because, you know, Elsa's a little bit unusual. So this one is Fire, this one is Gale, and this one is Cuddle Close, and they're all beautiful. And I loved using and enjoying this palette. I just feel like, again, it's a little bit, it does fall short for me that I can't really create more like neutral looks out of it, but it did help me step out of my comfort zone, and they are really beautiful shades. I love this silver as well. Oh my god. It's not like the formula is bad. I don't know what Andrea Mattiliano was talking about with this palette. I think she got a dud because every shade in here is beautiful except for, I think, the blue. Oh my god, I just dropped the plastic insert. I don't think the blue is anything special in this palette, but every other shade in the palette is really, really good. I love Northern Lights as well, the Super Shock shadow in here, which is this guy. But yeah, that would be the only reason why I would rank it a lot lower. But I did really enjoy using it, and I don't regret getting it at all because you guys know I have to get every single Disney palette that ColourPop releases. And the movie was great, and you guys know I'm a Frozen fanatic. I absolutely love Frozen like every other person. So, number 9, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9 would be the Beauty Bakery Proof is in the Pudding eyeshadow palette. Now, I do actually really love this palette, but I did rank 2 other neutral palettes a lot higher than this one. There is no rhyme or reason or negative feelings towards these palettes that I'm going to be sharing with you guys now. All these palettes that I'm ranking now, I absolutely love them. I'm just ranking them more so as to what my preference is, how much I reach for it. But the formula and everything else about the palette, I absolutely love. So this was the first eyeshadow palette that I ever tried from Beauty Bakery. I was really interested in trying their eyeshadow formula because I did fall in love with their Beauty Bakery cheek palette, the Scoops Elise one, that I was really dying to try their neutral formula. I mean, their eyeshadow palette formula. And this was actually was it the first? I think it was the first eyeshadow palette that I picked up in 2019. I was like, this was going to be the only one that I was going to pick up, but then I ended up picking up the Milani Pure Passion palette and the ColourPop Sweet Talk palette. So I did pick up pretty similar palettes. But this is a beautiful, everyday, warm, neutral palette. I feel like you have every color you could really need in here to create everyday eyeshadow looks. I think that this is a really beautiful, staple, everyday palette. I feel like if you're looking for a palette that you need everyday looks out of. I think that this is an amazing palette, and there's only 9 shades in here, but it's laid out to have every single shade you could possibly need. For fair to medium, even darker skin tones could use these 3 shades every day, and even like these 5 shades right here, and that will work for a darker skin tone as well. And then fairer skin tones could use pretty much any shade in here, and medium skin tones as well. I just feel like they really made this palette a super cohesive neutral eyeshadow palette, and this is how I wish ColourPop would like set up their palette sometimes. This is how you do a 9-pan eyeshadow palette. I just think they nailed it with the color scheme in this palette. They just put in staple neutral shades that you would need for an everyday basis. If you want to go warmer, you use the orange. If you want to go smoky chocolatey brown, you use the dark chocolate brown. If you want to go more subtle and yellow, you use Nana Pudding, a little bit of bread pudding, a little bit of rice pudding on the brow bone. And then these shimmer shades, there's 4 beautiful shimmer shades in here that you can use for anything. You can put this one on the inner corners, this one all over the lid. You can put this on the inner corners, that all over the lid. Like, there's just a beautiful cohesiveness about this palette. So I'm just going to swatch. And they're so buttery, and the formula is so smooth. They blend so beautifully. So I freaking love this palette. So again, there's no reason why it's lower. It's just my personal preference on how much I actually use the palette. Look at that. They're so beautiful. That one is butterscotched, and this one is, I believe, bread pudding. So beautiful. Absolutely love it. I highly recommend Beauty Bakery's eyeshadow palette formula. This was a solid palette for me, so I loved it. So there is no reason why it's lower. It's just, you know, again, what I said like 50 million times. There's just other palettes that I loved a hell of a lot more, but I still love this palette. So, okay, number 8. The reason why I ranked this one a little bit higher is that I feel like this palette did it right when you want to play with a little bit of color, but you also can get some beautiful neutral looks out of this palette. And that is the Lion King Sir John and Luminous Can't Wait to Be Queen eyeshadow palette. This palette was so much better than the freaking movie. That movie freaking sucked. I'm sorry. It was terrible. But this palette was the only good thing, and this collection was the only good thing that came out of this movie. The remake was just awful, but this eyeshadow palette killed it for me. Beautiful. Like, you have 2 rows of neutrals, but then you have these gorgeous pops of color up here. And I feel like this palette, again, you can get such beautiful neutral looks out of this palette. The mattes in this palette are so beautiful. They blend so beautifully. And these shimmer shades are so gorgeous. Oh my god, I love this palette. It's so beautiful. And then the shimmer shades, these are pigmented. They're beautiful. The only thing that I would say about the darker shades in here, because I actually really love the formula of these 3, Simba, Landscape, and Nala. Beautiful, amazing, love them. I would say this top row are a little bit glittery, that they can tend to crumble, and they can start creating a little bit more fallout or transfer in the crease throughout the day, but they're still stunning on the lid. I still don't regret buying this palette at all. They are just stunning. Like, this one is Simba. Like, are you kidding me with this pigment? They're so stunning. And this one is Nala. These are my 2 favorite shimmer shades in the palette. Insanely beautiful. So that one is Simba. That one is Nala. Oh my god, so freaking pretty. I probably would have ranked this palette a little bit higher on this list if it wasn't for all the other palettes that I ranked higher. But again, beautiful formula. I love the mattes in here. This one is Wisdom, and this one is King. Stunning. Mattes are stunning in here. I mean, they're going to swatch really softly, and that's what I love about them, because they blend so beautifully and build up so beautifully on the crease. I never had any problems blending these. Like, stunning. And then the pops of color, like this green. Are you kidding me right now? So beautiful. And that one is right there. I mean, just stunning. I really wish I could pull out this palette and use the colorful shades more. But they're just beautiful. And that one is Zazu. Like, come on. So pretty. So I highly recommend this palette. Beautiful. Love the formula in this. Sir John did an amazing job. This is how you come out with a makeup collab. You do it with a makeup artist because he's Beyonce's makeup artist and he slayed this palette. It's amazing. I love it. I love the packaging. I love everything about this palette. So, why am I spitting? I got too excited talking about this damn eyeshadow palette. Alright, so now let's get into the bread and butter. Let's get into the top 7. I mean, we're almost in the... Actually, right? This is 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, okay. There is another palette that I'm ranking together. This is 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, so number 7 would be the Disney Frozen 2 Anna palette. I ended up really falling in love with this palette. I just love how easy this palette is to use. I find that they made this palette the most cohesive 9-pan palette. If I could actually get this open, that would be phenomenal. I just found that they made this palette easier to use. Love the packaging. Again, freaking amazing. But just these 9 colors in this palette, you can do so much with this palette. And you can just pop on a brow bone highlight and call it a day. But the formula is solid in this palette. None of these mattes are dry in here. They blend beautifully. And the lid shades are stunning. Like, there's really nothing else I need to say about this palette. It's a solid palette. I love the shade Earth. Stunning. Adventure. Beautiful. Oh my god, they're just so buttery. Like, look how beautiful those swatch. I mean, beautiful. And then Wind and Fearless. Stunning. Love those as well. They're just so easy to use. Like, this is the formula I expect from ColourPop every time. They're just so beautiful and buttery. I also love Scoochin'. Oh my god. So pretty. Absolutely love this palette. I just find with this palette, it's a lot easier to use. And you can create some really beautiful neutral looks with this palette by just using this palette. And I just really love how they blend on the eye. So that's why I ranked this palette higher than the Frozen Elsa palette. So that's all I have to say about this guy. I just really loved this palette a lot. So, okay. So now let's get into more of the bread and butter. I just forgot to flip these over to make it easier for me to grab them. Okay. So that was a little sneak peek. All right, so number 6 would be the Milani Pure Passion eyeshadow palette. I can't believe how much I fell in love with this palette. This is the best drugstore palette I ever used, ever. I had never really played with too many drugstore eyeshadow palettes before this guy. I really wasn't too impressed with the e.l.f. Matte for Mouth palette. I ended up decluttering that to Marley, and I think she's used it, and I think she really likes it. And the Wet n Wild Not a Basic Peach palette. Why can't I speak right now? I like it, but for some reason the second one that I got after I broke the first one really did not impress me as much as the first one that I had. This palette blew me away. This palette is so freaking good. The best quality palette that I ever used from the drugstore. And these shades are amazing. Again, you just need this palette. There's 12 shades in here, and this is all you need. If you need a basic eyeshadow palette, it's so good. Like, you have your shimmers, you have your mattes, you have your staple shades in this one palette. Why would you need another neutral palette if you have this palette? I mean, I have a million neutral palettes, and I really wouldn't need them if I just have this palette. It is so good. The shimmers are beautiful and the mattes blend beautifully. Like, what else could you ask for? And this is an $18 eyeshadow palette. Yes, it is a little bit expensive, and it actually is more than the ColourPop palettes, but there's 9 shades in here, there's 12 shades in here, so you get what you paid for. So, I love these darker shimmer shades. They're just beautiful. They swatch beautifully. I love how they perform on the eyes. They're just so pretty. I absolutely love this palette. So, and I love the mattes in here as well. I mean, these mattes actually do feel dry, but I do like how they blend out more than the ColourPop 9-pan palettes. I just think they blend out so much easier. Those are the 2 mattes. So, again, nothing else really to say. I really do enjoy this formula, and I was so happy that I finally did try a Milani eyeshadow palette, because I heard nothing but great things about Milani eyeshadow palettes, and I heard great things about these, and I really did fall in love with them. So, amazing. Love it. Okay, number 5. Yes, number 5. Who is here? I don't think anybody's here. I don't know what they're barking at. No, nobody's here. Okay, number 5. I was actually impressed and kind of shocked on how much I ended up loving this palette, but at the same time I was like, Kaylin, you shouldn't be that shocked because you loved the first Disney collab that ColourPop came out with. Obviously, you're going to love this one too. And I'm talking about the Disney Midnight Masquerade Pressed Powder Palette. Now, at first, I wasn't going to be sucked in to use this, to get this palette, to use this palette. Obviously, I used it. But the packaging, why is it so stunning? Like, stunning. I just love this Stardust packaging. It's so beautiful. Well, fairy dust packaging, because I believe that this is from, like, Bippity Boppity Boo, from, like, Cinderella, but it's just so beautiful. And then the packaging here with all the princesses, I mean, come on. Like, just take my money, ColourPop, because you slayed with the packaging with this too. And I just love the shape of this palette, but the formula really impressed me in this palette. And the colors, even though people were like they're not too interesting, once you actually get the palette in person and you use it a lot, it really is such a fun palette to use, and the formula in this palette is stunning. All the mattes are amazing. They all are super buttery, blend beautifully, and then the lid shades, it's just very simply laid out, and you can create some beautiful looks with this palette. With the green, you could just add a bunch of neutrals, like the peachy shades. It's so beautiful. And then with these more subdued shades, you can add any of the shimmer, any of the matte shades, and it's just beautiful. So, of course, you guys know I love Mrs. Potts, but also Frog and Wife and Mama Odie are like my 3 favorite shades in here. Oh, so pretty. So freaking pretty. So those are the 3 shades. I love how they keep on highlighting Princess and the Frog in their collections, because Princess and the Frog is such an amazing Disney movie. It's just so good. And then I love, love, love the mattes in here. They're just so beautiful. Like Nutmeg and Pip, they're just such a beautiful formula. Like, look how pigmented that Nutmeg shade is. Like, are you kidding me? And Pip? Ridiculous. Ridiculous pigmentation. And Quasimodo, oh my god, Gaston. Look at that. Swatch is so amazing. I mean, not that amazing, but when you build it up, it's such a beautiful red. I love it. I'm so pretty. My favorite look to do with this palette was do kind of like a Belle look and do Pip in the crease and do a little bit of Gaston here, and then Quasimodo on the outer corners, and then put Mrs. Potts all over the lid. Stunning. The only thing I wish this palette had was a brow bone highlight, but the formula in this palette was so amazing. And I love doing Floating Lantern with the 2 pinks in the crease. So beautiful, putting that all over the lid, and then this in the crease, and then New Dream. Oh, New Dream is such a pretty color too. Oh my god. The pigment of these mattes were so good. Like they're dry, but they just apply beautifully. They're not going to swatch that great because I keep on wiping off the my eyeshadow that I'm swatching with a makeup remover. So, but yeah, with a makeup wipe. But I love this palette. And I really didn't want to get sucked into buying this, but I'm like, I need it. I need it. It's Disney. You guys know I'm a sucker for Disney, and I just needed it in my life. So now let's get into more amazing palettes. So why am I clapping? I don't know. Okay, so number 4. Yes, number 4 would be this guy, and this palette, again, I wasn't going to buy this eyeshadow palette. I wasn't going to buy this one either, but they ended up being my top picks this year. So number 4 would be the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. This palette is so stunning, you guys. If you guys needed a palette that you were kind of wanting to play with a little bit more neutral colors, that you didn't want just basic browns every single day, this is your palette. I think that this is the best curated palette that Urban Decay has come out with since the Naked Heat. Because the Naked Cherry is a good palette, but you guys know that the Naked Heat is like one of my all-time favorite Urban Decay palettes. But this one, the formula and just the way it's laid out, you have every single possible neutral you could use in this palette. Amazing. And the formula is so good. So good. Like, if you have not tried this and you have the Naked palettes, what are you doing? You need this palette. It's not even an option. Don't tell me it's an option, because it's not an option unless you try this, because it is so good. The mattes in here are amazing. They blend so beautifully, and the lid shades are stunning. Stunning. So, like, the matte shades in here are so buttery. And they're so pigmented. And like, Urban Decay just came out of nowhere and dropped this amazing palette. Like, are you kidding me with how good that swatch is? And then golden. Oh my gosh, you guys know. Golds are my favorite. If you could actually see it, that would be amazing. I mean, ridiculous how beautiful that is. And then amber's like my other favorite. And I love honey. Oh my god, I love honey so much. Honey is so beautiful. It's like this beautiful, again, yellow gold shade. So pretty. You need it if you collect the Naked palettes. It's literally so stunning. One of the best eyeshadow palettes Urban Decay has ever come out with. I love it. I just used it a couple of days ago, and I remembered how much I love it. That's why I ranked it so high. It's just such an easy palette to use. Honestly, when I use this palette, you don't need to use anything else. Maybe on the inner corners, sometimes I'll take a different color, because sometimes the Naked palettes do lack inner corner shades for fair skin tones. But 99% of the time I use golden and just use a different shade on the lid. But again, amazing. I absolutely love this palette. So now let's get into the top 3. We made it there. So number 3 is the ColourPop Sweet Talk palette. This is my favorite palette above my number 1 palette, which you guys know is going to be ColourPop. So number 3 is the ColourPop Sweet Talk palette. Again, the formula in this palette is freaking amazing. I absolutely fell in love with this palette when I first got it. This was my favorite ColourPop palette until my number 1 pick, but this was my number 1 favorite palette of the year from ColourPop. This palette is amazing. It is stunning, beautiful. I just felt like the color story in here was so unique, and I just love that they put like these pressed glitters in here. And I really want to whip this palette out and use it again. I would have used it today, but this is my spring palette, and this is like probably the only palette I'm going to be using this spring, just so I can use it a bunch. The mattes in here are beautiful. The shimmers in here are amazing. I just love it. It's so good. So I absolutely love the Super Shock Shadow in here. I love the gold color. I mean, how many times can I say that I love a gold? I mean, I don't know if I could say it enough. So that one is Side to Side, and this one is Melody. So good. So good. And then Garden Date. Oh my god, I love this shade. It's such a beautiful color. Look at that. So pretty. And then I'm just so tired. Like, if you could tell, I'm like so tired. But none of these mattes in here are dry feeling. They all feel super smooth. And I just think with this palette, ColourPop really took their time to make an amazing palette, because I feel like with their other releases, they kind of just rush them and just concentrate on sucking the consumer in. I feel like with this, kind of, you know, started getting our interest into really like buying every single eyeshadow palette from ColourPop. But this palette is amazing. I can't say enough good things about it. It's beautiful. I absolutely love this palette. So yeah, that's why it's my number 3. I love this palette to death. I can't imagine my collection without it. It's just so good. I love it so much. So that is that. Let's wipe off a couple more swatches so we can get into my top 2.5 picks, because one of the palettes that I'm going to be talking about, I did try at the tail end of last year, but since I'm talking about my Best in Beauty this year, I wanted to include it in this video, because I didn't include it in my last video, and I'm not just gonna talk about eye products in another video with just one random palette and then talking about eyeliners and mascaras. No, I'm just gonna include it in this palette. So in this video, so I wanted to rank these two palettes together, but this is the year that I absolutely fell in love with Natasha Denona, and I wanted to talk about these two palettes. So I would rank this one a little bit lower than this one, even though I absolutely love this palette. And again, you guys know I'm a sucker for gold, but I would have to say the Natasha Denona gold palette crept up my list, and this is still, Natasha Denona is still one of the best eyeshadow formulas I've ever tried. And I'm so glad I didn't really have to pay for this palette. So this is the Natasha Denona Gold palette, and I had to rank it super high because the mattes in here are amazing and the golds in here are so stunning. I just love the color scheme of this palette. Even though there's not too many golds in here, I kind of appreciate that, because the bronzy shades in here are just so beautiful and antique looking. They kind of have like this unique antique foiled look to them. I don't know how she does it, but the shimmer shades in here are beautiful, stunning, and the mattes in here, forget about it. They blend so beautifully. Oh my god, so pretty. And these mattes are super, super soft. So that one is, I don't even know what the shade names are, but I'm just going to swatch a couple of them for you. Of course, you guys know I have to swatch the shimmery yellow, because look at that pigment. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. That's the best gold I have in my whole collection. Out of all these palettes I'm showing you guys, that one is the best. It's just so ridiculously foiled. And then these shimmers, forget about it. Forget about it. Forget about it. They're beautiful. I never actually did a true review on this palette, but I'm telling you guys, it's stunning. And yes, Natasha Denona, why are you so expensive? Why are you so expensive? But these are so pretty. And this blue, beautiful. It doesn't swatch like anything, but it is stunning. And I love using that for like a blue look in this palette. But I really did fall in love with with Natasha Denona eyeshadows. I don't know if I used this color. Did I use this color? I might have used it in the crease. Oh, that is pretty too. I might have used it in a crease for like blue looks that I did with this palette. But they really just are super soft, and that's why I really love them. Because they don't feel dry, like that dry kind of matte formula. They just feel super soft. So it does look like I've used this palette a ton. It's because I have, because this was the first palette that I got at the tail end of December. I think it was like the beginning of December maybe. And this was the only new palette in my collection until like March. So I did get a ton of use out of it, and I have to say I fell in love with it. So Now let's talk about the Natasha Denona Sunrise palettes. And the reason why this one is ranked higher than the gold palette is, one, because the price is so much more modest than the, my hands are full of swatches, than the gold palette. But also, you guys know I'm a sucker for warm tones, so obviously I had to get this palette. And the reason why I rank it so high is look how much I've used this palette. Like, the Natasha Denona palettes actually look like I've used them, and I absolutely love this palette. The formula in this palette is absolutely amazing, but also the color scheme is beautiful. You can create so many beautiful looks out of this palette, and originally I was kind of dying to get the Natasha Denona Sunset palette, and that was the palette I really wanted my boyfriend to get me for Christmas, like I think a year ago. Or I wanted him to get me the gold palette, but since I got the gold palette myself, and I also got this one myself, because this one I got in like May or June, around like the same time that I got the main squeeze palette, I got the Lion King palette, and then I got this one, and I just automatically fell in love with this palette. I love Agate, I love Laurel, beautiful shimmers. Like, her shimmers are ridiculously stunning. So those are my two favorite shades. You're not really going to see them that well, but they just feel so buttery to the touch. I love Flax. And then I love the mattes as well. They're just so stunning. I mean, why is Natasha not a very nice person though? But her eyeshadow is on another level. It's just some of the most stunning eyeshadow you're ever going to use in your life. And then Awakening, again, one of my favorite shades in the palette. It's just so beautiful. So pretty. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say about it. I just love this palette. So that's why it was ranked so ridiculously high. Because I just fell in love with it. I really, really ended up loving it. So, and I do really love that she made the price range a little bit more accessible to people that don't want to spend $129 on a freaking eyeshadow palette. The only reason why I got the gold palette is because I exchanged the gifts that Chip sent to me, and I got it with a store credit. Oh, and Dayspring's one of my favorites too. That's one of my favorites. How could I forget to swatch that one? Like, so beautiful. They just swatch like so pigmented and buttery. Like, no one can beat her shimmer shades for me. Well, I mean, I love ColourPop shimmers just as much as I love Natasha Denona. But I think Natasha Denona, Lime Crime, and ColourPop are like my three top favorite eyeshadow formulas. And now, the number one pick, I don't think you guys are going to be surprised, is the ColourPop So Jaded Kathleen Lights and ColourPop palette. This palette. I was not going to get this palette. And then it just crept up on me and became my favorite palette this year because it's just so beautiful. This is the first time that ColourPop decided to drop a 30 pan eyeshadow palette on us, and I just love the whole like jade theme in this palette, and I just love the packaging. But then you get this amazing goodness in this palette, and it's just such an amazing palette. It's so cohesive. I just feel like we didn't see anything like this from any other brand, and she nailed it. She nailed it with this palette, and this basically became probably my all-time favorite eyeshadow palette, like ever. If I just had this palette in my collection and I got rid of every other eyeshadow palette I was talking about on this list, I could have this palette for so long and create so many beautiful looks with it. I just feel like you have everything you could possibly need in this palette. And I feel like if I went traveling, if I just took this palette with me, I would be good. I would be good. I absolutely love it. You have blues in here, you have greens in here, you have warm tones in here, you have this beautiful red, you have beautiful staple neutrals. I just freaking love it so much, and I think that they did such an amazing job. I just think it's so beautiful. I just want you to take in the goodness. So, of course, my favorite shade is Peridot, but also I think the formula in this palette is just amazing. Peridot is one of the most beautiful eyeshadows I've ever seen. So stunning. Pearl, you guys know, is my jam. And, of course, I'm wearing this eyeshadow palette today. I did a really super neutral look with it because, obviously, I had to wear my number one pick. And I love Sunstone as well as a beautiful warm tone shimmery shade. Absolutely beautiful. It's right there. And then, of course, I love Smoky Quartz and Emerald. I just wore finally again a couple of days back in my Christmas look, and it was stunning. So beautiful. That's Moonstone. That's Emerald, obviously. And I feel like I really want to play with Aquamarine and Fluorite again very soon because I haven't really used them too much. But Aquamarine is a stunning shade on the lid. It's so beautiful. And then Fluorite's right here. It doesn't swatch very pigmented Fluorite, but it is a beautiful shade as well. I love using that with Ametrine. And then let's swatch a couple mattes. I mean, Jasper is amazing, and I love Rose Quartz. So pretty. I feel like Jasper's getting a dip in it. Pearl's getting a dip in it. I feel like the only shade I would ever hit pan on in this palette is probably Pearl because I use it like on an everyday basis when I use this palette. So that one is Rose Quartz, which is one of my favorite mattes. That one is Jasper, which is such a beautiful shade. I could be swatching this palette all day, and let's just swatch Ruby because Ruby is stunning as well. I definitely love this shade more than like that red shade in the ColourPop Main Squeeze palette. So that one is the red. But yeah, I love this palette. It's amazing. She nailed it, and I can create so many looks with this palette. Please check out my looks that I did with this palette on my channel. I did a 3 looks 1 palette video, and I absolutely was obsessed with the looks that I came out with. I just love it. I think they did such an amazing job, and this is my number 1 pick for this year. And I'm so happy that I added this to my collection. I just get such pleasure out of using it. So today, I put Rose Quartz in the crease. Then I just did some Jasper on the for the defining shade. Then I used, sorry, I should actually show you guys the shades as I'm talking about them. I just don't know how to hold this palette right now. I used Rose Quartz first in the crease, and I darkened up the crease more with Jasper right here. Then I used Stone on the outer corners, and then I used Pearl all over the lid with a little bit of Diamond, which is the Super Shock that is so stunning. And then I just put My Precious on the brow bone as usual, and then on the inner corners I just used Moonstone, and that was pretty much it. And then I just threw on some liner on my, hold on, I thought I screwed up my nail polish for a second, but it's just, yeah, it kind of got a little bit scratched up, but it's okay. I just wiped it off. So yeah, that is pretty much it, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed my top picks of 2019. I hope you guys can let me know what your favorite eyeshadow palette was this year. Please leave it in the comments below. I'm not sure if I wasn't really going to touch on other eye products in this video. I might touch on those in another video for Best in Beauty. So yeah, I gotta go. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on all my social media. And again, let me know what your top palettes were this year. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Bye!